Hey y'all! Welcome to the start of another weekly reading vlog. It's Monday. I have been being productive because I'm also on my productivity week, which I've thrown around the idea of filming a video for this for quite some time now. Basically, my productivity week is where I take the entire week to do as much filming and editing as I can for the entire month. So you guys are gonna get to come along with me, which will be very interesting. I have no idea how this is gonna go. I have actually gotten 2 videos filmed today already, and I'm very glad. Not to mention, it's fantastic that my TBR jar pulls were what they were, and that I'm filming them this week because they're fairly short. That's great. So starting out, my digital book I'm going to be reading is actually a comic, and that was Superman, Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow. Still not 100% sure why this was on my TBR. I think my friend Ed might have recommended it to me because I said I wasn't a big Superman fan. I do know now that this is apparently written by Alan Moore, which is an author I do enjoy. He wrote Watchmen, V for Vendetta, Batman the Killing Joke. He also wrote From Hell. Basically, all that's to say that he tends to be a little more hardcore, a little grittier, and I'm really interested to see how that goes with Superman, who on one hand can be quite dark if you're thinking like Injustice style Superman or Lord Superman. But on the other hand, 9 times out of 10, he's a big blue Boy Scout. Let's be real here. There's a reason I'm not a big fan of Superman, and it's because I'm sorry, he's so overpowered that he's kind of boring. He's never really gonna lose, except in The Dark Knight Returns against Batman, which is fantastic. Not only that, he's just so perfect. Yeah, that's just not my type of character, okay? I realize I like the angsty, dramatic, asshole characters. It's my type, okay? I'm aware of this. So, because of Alan Moore's usual writing style and how Superman is usually characterized and the reasons I don't really like him, I am pretty intrigued to go into this. It's not very long, thankfully, which makes perfect sense because it was the shortest book on my TBR prompt. Usually, I always save my comics for later in the week whenever I read them, but I'm actually still finishing out my comic book reading vlog, so I think I'm gonna include that for that video also, just because it works out very perfectly. And I have to get that video finished and edited and ready for uploading on Friday, meaning I'm probably gonna read that here soon. I'll probably read it tonight, that way I can kind of talk about it with y'all and that vlog tomorrow. Apart from the comic, I'm also gonna be reading Crying in H-Part by Michelle Zauner. This was for an unread author. Thankfully, it worked out that this is pretty short also, so hopefully I can get it read, especially because I can't find the audiobook for it anywhere. Oh well. I'm also buddy reading this with 𝗖cie at Pretty Purple Polka Dots, so here's hoping that we have a good buddy read and probably end up crying about this book together because I've heard punches you in the gut. This is Michelle Zauner's memoir in which she is detailing her experience with her mother's cancer diagnosis and her eventual death. I'm ready with tissues, I guess. My repetition there probably didn't instill a bunch of confidence. You might actually see me cry in this video. Hasn't happened in many videos, but we'll see. This pick also worked out perfectly for the fact that Michelle Zauner is Korean and May is Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Since I can't get the audiobook of this, and obviously I don't have an audiobook of the comic, I did decide to pick up the audiobook for Catherine House by Elizabeth Thomas. I don't really have a plan for this book specifically, which is why I was like, why not just throw it in here? This is actually the book club pick for Jane Agaton's Full Moon book club in May. It might be a mistake reading it so early because her discussions aren't usually until a few weeks into the following month. We'll see how that goes. I may not remember any of this. I've heard this is very divisive, and that makes me really intrigued, honestly. Anytime a book is divisive, I kind of want to read it all the more and see which side I fall on. I know we're following this young woman who has recently gotten into this very elite college university. Once you get in, you completely isolate yourself from the outside world. She starts learning about like the secret societies there or something. That summary was a lot longer than anticipated, so I'm not really gonna read it. We'll see how this goes. I'm intrigued but nervous. Also, highly appreciate the fact that this has deckled edges. I love deckled edges. They're fantastic. They add such character to the book. I love it. Now, like I said, I am doing my productivity week, which already that means I probably won't have as much reading time because in the afternoons, I'm mostly gonna be focusing on filming or editing. The other issue that's going up against me when it comes to my reading is I am currently in a fan fiction hole. I read a random fic that came up based on a tag on AO3. I didn't recognize the couple. school. I hadn't seen the movie they were from, but now I'm obsessed and I'm literally reading every single fic I can. It's ridiculous. I'm aware of this. I've basically been doing nothing but reading those fan fictions for like the last 3 days. I'm really, really hoping that one of either these 2 books or the comic pull me in a lot, because otherwise this will be a very, very slow reading vlog. Hey guys, it's Tuesday, and already we're not off to the best start. I've already lied to you. I told you I was going to start into my comic last night. Did not. Rather, I started into Crying in H-Mart. I read the first chapter, which mostly was her focusing on H-Mart, and already I'm enjoying it. I love that the author puts such a focus on how important food is to connect people, how it allows her to connect with her culture. As a foodie myself, I love that. I love talking about that. There are certain foods that anytime I make them, anytime I eat them, I think about different people in my life, who I've shared it with, who I've cooked it for, who I learned it from. I love food, so that was something that automatically pulled me into the story. I've never been to an H-Mart, which is a Korean grocery store. How she describes it and the layout of it does remind me of 𝗖cie, which is a Japanese grocery store that I've been to many times. It felt like a very similar setup. Obviously, I'm not Japanese though, so I don't have the same connection to 𝗖cie that she has to H-Mart. But already, I'm really enjoying this. It did make me tear up a little bit when she was talking about her relationship with her mom and the connection they had over food, and how even now she cries when she eats certain things or she sees certain things at H-Mart, and just I almost started crying too. 1 chapter down and I'm already super into this. Did not start my comic, but I did listen to the first 2 chapters of Catherine House this morning, so I'm about 40 pages in. I don't know how to feel about this. Already tons of Dark Academia vibes. Definitely a similar setting to Truly Devious. That's the one that immediately came to my mind, but also I could see it with People We Like, People Like Us, something like that. It's by Dana Meal. I read it for a Dark Academia video, so I'll put a link to that up above. We have our main character, Inez, who has a bit of a mysterious backstory. It seems as though it was just her and her mom, and like a month before she was going to graduate high school, her mom like disappeared or something, and basically she kind of just dropped out of school, did whatever she wanted, and somehow she managed to get into Catherine House, and now that she is there, she's sort of just floating her way through. She's really not going to classes. She kind of parties, but like not really. She mostly just lays around and does whatever she wants, which, I mean, shit, if I could do that for 3 years, I would love to, but you know, I actually worked when I went to college. I like her roommate, Baby, who apparently is a bit of a nerd, very awkward, but she's really adorable. And they do have this kind of odd opposites attract sisterly relationship going on right now that I enjoy. Apart from that, nothing's really happened. I think the vibes are definitely there. There's something just not quite right. There's some sort of a punishment for the students who don't adhere to the curriculum program and don't actually take their studies seriously, and hasn't dealt with it yet. However, I feel like there's a little bit of foreboding around that. So now, honestly, I'm still in my fanfic bullshit. I've probably read like 5 fanfics today, at least. I woke up early and I did that so that I could read further into Crying in H-Mart. But no, rather I just laid in bed, pulled up another fanfic. I don't know why I'm like this, okay? I'm just really lost. I'm just really lost on this new ship. It's ridiculous. It's actually even eaten into my productivity week a little bit, because honestly, apart from this update that I'm filming right here, didn't do anything else tonight. Just laid in bed, read fanfic, watch Bones. I'm not proud of myself, okay? This means I have to double down even more tomorrow. I may actually have to like block myself from Archive of Our Own this week, which is really drastic, but apparently it might need to be done. I've hit a stopping point. I just finished out a very good series of fanfics, all by the same author, that was like in the same little universe that I really enjoyed. They're really good. Off of that, I'm gonna go take a shower. I'm gonna lay in bed. And I'm gonna force myself to read some freaking comics so I can finish out this comic book reading vlog. I'm kicking myself, but yet I can't stop myself.
little Samwise.
Hey guys, so it's Wednesday. Hi, I had a day. Let's just go with that. I had a day at work. I actually did some reading, not as much as I would like. I did not read 𝗖ście迄𝘁 last night. Rather, I picked up the final volume of the Harley Quinn run I was in the middle of. So I worked on my comic book reading vlog, but I did really enjoy that one. I was not expecting the turn it took. It's still like a little all over the place and not all of the issues really come together to create a cohesive story, but still super enjoyable. Then, this morning, even though I woke up early, I read more fan fiction. At lunch actually, I picked up my shortest book from my Goodreads TBR. So I read Superman, Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow by Alan Moore. Technically speaking, I only read that storyline. The volume that I downloaded of this from my library actually had 2 or 3 additional issues that were following Superman but didn't really adhere to the rest of that story. Now that I've actually read it, I can tell you it is an alternate world in which basically Superman is believed to have died. He disappeared. He was officially beaten in this final showdown with all of his major big name bad guys. Lois Lane is telling the story of how this happened to a reporter from the Daily Planet. Honestly, I liked it. I don't hate Superman. I want to put that out there. He's just not really my type of character. And even with this, still wasn't my type of character. I mean, overall, that wasn't what endeared me to the story. I just was shocked at how dark this was. But then again, it was written by Alan Moore, so like that really shouldn't surprise me. What was weird though in my reading experience of this was I almost had like cognitive dissonance between the art style and the plot. The art style is so old school classic comics, and it was the epitome of that. But the storyline was so much darker. In terms of colorization, this was so incredibly bright in comparison, again, to the very dark contents of the story, which just really throws me off because majority of the time when I'm reading a DC story run, most of the time it'll somehow be in Batman's sphere, which means a lot of that art is pretty dark. And it matches with the darker storylines, but this one, it just really threw me off. I had a really hard time reading it and then looking at the art and realizing like this does not match up well. So that was really weird, but I do think overall I did enjoy this. The implications behind the whole storyline is just like, wow, damn, Moore really went there. But then at the same time, like the ending is just so perfectly a Superman sort of ending where it's, I don't want to say anything because of spoilers, sort of the thing of why I don't really like his stories. So I at least have knocked out my digital book for the week. Thus far, like not a lot has really happened. I guess it's kind of character-based because we're spending all our time with Inez and sort of exploring her. Really, I mean, it just seems sort of like an atmospheric read so far. Not that I'm complaining about that, I love atmosphere, but I'm at about 64 pages in, and this isn't super long, so hopefully I can work through it maybe within this single week. I do like boring books, but it depends on the type of boring, if that makes sense.
So it's 10 o'clock at night. Honestly, I keep forgetting to film this update because I'm trying to finish out my comic book vlog for tomorrow. I hope and pray that it's already been finished and posted, so I'll put a link to that in the cards if it has. Technically speaking, I've read quite a lot today because I read volume 4, volume 5, and currently I'm in the middle of volume 6. Apart from these, in terms of this actual reading vlog that I can talk about, I read another chapter into Catherine House. Weird things are happening. Inez has kind of, I don't even know what to call it. It feels almost culty. I have a cult video planned and I almost want to make this work for it because it's definitely giving off cult vibes. Seeing as how I picked this book for a prompt for the Star Wars readathon, it was something along the lines of like, read a book with a similar synopsis to a book you've already read. And I picked this up off of the fact that it sounded similar to Ninth House. Now that I'm this far into it and I'm getting the culty vibes, yeah, it's definitely similar to Ninth House. So I am about 110 pages in, and I don't know how to feel about this. It's weird. I'm invested enough anytime I listen to it. It's not mind-boggling. I'm not absolutely obsessed with it, have to keep reading, but it's holding my attention. I'm gonna continue. I don't know how to feel about this. Inez kind of was trying for a little bit, and now she's reverted back to not trying, and then now that she's kind of entered into this like group think mindset, perhaps she'll be trying again. It's weird. Along with that, I also read some of Crying in HMart this morning because Aoife, who I'm buddy reading this with, has hit chapter 11 and I was at chapter 1 and I felt awful. So I forced myself to read a bunch of this morning while I was drinking my coffee. I am currently at chapter 7, so I still haven't quite caught up, but I made some progress. I really like Michelle Zauner's writing style. I just feel as though I know her so well. I really feel like we would get along. That might be a very odd thing to say. She was talking about how important music became in her life when she was a teenager and how she threw her all into it, really tried to become this musician when she was young. And even though her parents were supportive, her mom didn't really think of it as a serious job, as a serious future, and how that hurt her. She talks about their tumultuous relationship whenever she was a teenager, and that's obviously a big part of it, is her dedication to being a musician. Seeing as how she lives in Oregon, of course, if she's a musician, you can't not talk about the grunge music scene. So like at one point she made a comment about Modest Mouse, and now I've been listening to them ever since then. Food has definitely maintained its importance throughout the story. Like I said before, I love that. She does an interesting thing where she will start out talking about the next step in her mother's demise. That sounds really dark, but she'll talk about the next step and then it'll remind her of something, and she'll kind of reminisce about something from the past that connects with it before bringing it back to the present. And I really like how she does that. But in terms of the present timeline, it's really weird to talk like that with a memoir. In the present timeline, her mother has been diagnosed with cancer. One way or another, it's rough. Oh my god, it's sad. And whenever she finally found out, she was actually in New York, and her boyfriend at the time he drove up to stay with her because she was dealing with the fact that her mom had just been diagnosed with cancer. And he actually said, "Your parents told me first and made me promise that I would be there whenever they told you." I'm not gonna lie, that really okay. Yeah, that got me. That got me last night. I'm trying not to cry now. But yeah, that definitely got me. I wasn't expecting it to. I don't know why it got me so hard, but it did. Still slightly emotionally wrecking me. I haven't ended up sobbing yet. Also, it's very clear that she and her father have had a tumultuous relationship since her mother passed. Shit's rough, man. And actually you find out her relationship with her mother improved her relationship with her father. And now that her mother has passed, I was talking about it with Aoife. Michelle Zauner actually might be no contact with her father, and like I think that just makes the whole situation even sadder. Not a happy book to talk about, but I'm enjoying my process of reading it. I'm engaged. I'm engaged in it, and every time I pick it up, I am completely invested within the story. Like I said, it's Thursday. Thankfully, I had a fairly low-key day today. Like I said, I have been focused on trying to get my comic book reading vlog finished out for the night. That was sort of like my big productivity thing of the day, though I did film my May reading journal, so I have that done also. Josh actually has Saturday off, so I'm gonna be spending the night at his on Friday night, which is a little bit different than my usual vlogging standard. I probably won't get much read tomorrow. I don't even know if I'll actually get an update filmed. That does mean I will hopefully have some reading time Saturday night. I still have a fair amount left in Crying in HMart, and I would like to at least get this book done this week. If I can, that would be really great.
Hi friends, so I went to Josh's on Friday night, and usually I just spend the one night. So I was planning to come home Saturday, and I was expecting that I was going to be super productive on Sunday. Didn't happen. Rather, Josh and I started watching Spy Family, got completely addicted on Saturday, so I spent the night again. It is now Sunday night. Good job past that. I'm not even gonna be mad about it because it was a very nice, very relaxing weekend. Super chill. We finished out Licorice Recoil for the current season that has been released, and it was so good. Oh my gosh. And I can't wait for the next season, especially because there's definitely some feels going on between the two main characters, and I want it to become a full-blown Yuri, and I want to be able to actually see them as a couple rather than just friends with very little boundaries. Then, like I said, we started into Spy Family, and we literally watched the entire first season, all 25 episodes. A lot of binging, but I can now say I think that show may be one of the cutest things I've ever watched. It is freaking adorable, and now I desperately want to start the manga. I own the first one, so it is taking a lot for me to not just immediately pick that up. But while I was heading over to Josh's, I did read another 2 chapters of Catherine House. So right now I am at 158 pages, so I'm probably about halfway. Still nothing continues to happen. There's this weird substance that a lot of people at the school are obsessed with. Apparently some previous students from the school specialized in researching it, studying this substance, and even now people are still obsessed with it. Basically, it sounds to me as though they're in medical school. All they do is study. All their life is their schooling, which, I mean, I'm not calling out medical students if they are or are not like that, but from when I was in college, I know anybody who was planning to go in the medical field, that's how they were. Everybody in the nursing major was like that, and understandable. It's a hard concentration to have. So it makes sense, but it's weird. And Ez is kind of making friends with some people, but at the same time, she still keeps everybody at a distance. However, she's determined to seduce this one kid that is in that concentration so that she can learn more about it. There really isn't a lot driving the story at all. I'm still reading it. I'm still pushing through because I am curious to figure out what the heck is going on, but there's really not a lot going on in this book. I also worked more on Crying in H-Mart. I actually got the audiobook from my library, so I've been working through that this afternoon. I am currently at chapter 15, and I haven't cried again, but I've definitely been emotional reading this. I'm on the verge. It's heavy. It's exactly what I was anticipating. I've now hit the point where her mother has recently passed. She talked about the fact that whenever she realized how serious her mother's condition was at that point, that she called her boyfriend and was like, if we're gonna get married at some point down the line, if you see us getting married at some point down the line, we're gonna get married now so my mom can be there. That did hit me in the heart, and he says yes, and they do it. They pull off a wedding in 3 weeks. That was rough. I also love how she talks about the struggles she has taking care of her mom, and then also having to trust other people to take care of her mom, especially this one friend who helps take care of her mom who is also Korean, and because of the ability for only those two to speak Korean, it really separates Michelle and her father from her mother, and she really struggles with her feelings there because on one hand this woman is bringing her mother so much comfort, but on the other hand she's causing a bigger rift between the family in this time where they know things are looking really grim. Her mother does not have as much time. Just the discussions around grief, how debilitating it can be, but at the same time how invigorating. That sounds so weird. The way she's already grieving her mother prior to her death, and then the struggles she has with her grief because her mother was such a big part of her life, and how so much of her life was impacted by this woman that she can't help but see her in everything around her. Her writing is very strong, and I definitely need to look up some of her music and listen to it because I'm getting more and more intrigued, especially when she talks about her music career, and I believe her husband is also a musician. Nothing has quite made me cry like the situation with her boyfriend at the beginning of the book, but I am still, it sounds terrible to say, enjoying this. I'm engaged with it. I really am glad I'm reading. It's weird to talk about books when they're really sad, but you're having a good time with it. That doesn't sound any better, Nat. And technically speaking, I should be wrapping up this vlog here. But I am so freaking close to finishing this that I think I'm just gonna continue this vlog until I finish it. Hi guys, so it's Monday night and I officially finished out Crying in H. Like I was saying last night, it's very weird to say I was enjoying this book, but across the board, I do think I really liked my reading experience with this. I love how consistently food was a major theme, particularly at the end of the book. It was a way she was really able to connect with her mother. She makes a comment about actually being her mother, and well, I don't think it was quite that. I can understand what she was doing there. I also really loved seeing her relationship with her mother's older sister. Even though they had a language barrier, they were still able to connect with one another more so than she could with anybody else in her life because of their relationships with her mom. After her music makes it big and she and her husband ended up staying with her aunt in Korea, I loved that she was still able to connect with her mother through her aunt and through the city her mother lived in. That was really emotionally moving right there at the end. So with that, I do have to say, I don't think this is like the most moving memoir I've ever read, but still overall enjoyable. It sounds so weird to say enjoyable. A good reading experience. I don't know what term to use here. I do think that this book was more of Michelle Zauner's way of trying to deal with her grief herself, because she comments she tried therapy, it just wasn't really working for her, and rather she ended up relying on self-care to move forward from the grief she was feeling over her mom's death. And a big way she did that was in cooking the things that her mother loved. I definitely can see how people can connect with her story though, in having a tumultuous relationship with your mother, in having a family member struggling with terminal illness, in exploration of grief. All of that I think was well handled. I would have probably liked certain elements to be explored a little bit more, but again, I'm not going to fault it too much for that, just because I felt like this was Michelle Zauner's way of dealing with this experience she had lived through, and I can't fault her for it. I think she was kind enough to share it with people and allow them the possibility to connect with her over something that is incredibly personal and private. And I feel really weird putting a rating on this because of the experience with reading it and what I feel like this book is to the author. So honestly, I don't think I'm gonna rate this book. Yeah, so that's it for now. Thank you so much for coming to my channel, guys. I really appreciate it. Make sure to hit like and subscribe down below. I have all my socials as well as a few ways you can support me linked in the description. I come out with videos on Monday and Friday, but until then, I hope you continue to have a terrific day. Love you, bye!